Obviously today we're here to talk about digitalising the turnaround process. You guys are all the experts, I'm just here to ask the questions. But I think first and foremost, I gave a brief introduction to each of you, but it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your expertise, your roles. So starting to my right, Dave, I'll let you take it away.
Sounds good. So I'm the Director of Reliability, Maintenance and Turnaround for Nova Chemicals. I've been with Nova for about two and a half years. I guess it's 2.5 now. My background is exactly that. I've been a reliability engineer, maintenance engineer, maintenance manager, turnaround manager. So it's kind of, this is my bread and butter.
Wealth of expertise. Suresh, I'll hand over to you. Give everyone that was here earlier a little bit of a refresher for those folks that weren't in there in the first introduction.
Thank you, glad to be here. Myself, I'm Suresh Padmanabhan, call me nickname Suresh. I'm with Indorama last 12 years. Previous I was with SABIC, another organization. And I'm based out in Bangkok. My role is CTO, Senior Vice President, Global Manufacturing Head. We have various verticals. So it is one of the verticals is integrated PET, which is more than 6 million ton capacity. So it's an interesting topic to discuss and share. Thank you.
Sure, thanks Suresh. And Nicholas, we'd love to introduce you, obviously sponsor of the event. Tell everyone in the room a little bit about Prevu3D and the things you're doing.
So Prevu is an innovative startup from Montreal. We specialize in delivering value through digital twins. One of the key aspects is really we start with reality, so 3D scanning technology, and we're trying to enable people to do more with the data. Just we're happy to be here today.
Perfect. And then finally, Jacob, over to you on the far end of the panel.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. My name is Jacob Gleason. I'm with Chevron. I'm a digital advisor for our capital projects group, so I'm not directly engaged with the turnaround process. But there's a lot of, we are customers of Prevu3D. We found them about 2 years ago, I think, and started bringing them in to help us with some of our early design processes. And I was out at our Richmond refinery 2 weeks ago talking to a turnaround manager, showing them the tools that we're using and what we're using it for. And he said, man, this has really practical applications for us here during turnarounds to help us with our radars, with the quick scans, we can be able to visualize those scans and do some of our turnaround planning up front early. So that's kind of why I'm here, is in support of Nick and his group as a customer of the Prevu3D platform.
Perfect. Yeah, and as you mentioned, that is something we're going to get into a little bit later in the panel. Nice case study there. But in terms of kicking things off, obviously, I do want to just reinforce to everyone in the crowd that you can use the Slido app that is
So I think, simply put, if we don't jump on board, we're going to left behind. You know, kind of looking at how we can embrace technology in I'd say an area where we've traditionally been quite kind of brute force. You know, it's how we're going to have to transform this industry, and being able to have a much better idea of where our workforce is, how we move them around, how our schedule's progressing. It's just so critically important, and that way we can actually really improve the predictability of our events and drive that better productivity out in the field.
Yeah, sure. And I think when I spoke with you previously, we talked around a number of these technology and digitalization aspects when it comes to the turnaround process, particularly in the run-up to this event. And one of the things that you always sort of brought to the table was the idea of starting small and really using that as a hub to grow out to the wider business and see the impact. So I don't know if you want to talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So if first of all, kind of what we've done so far is, and really embedded within the teams is kind of digitalization of the whole planning side. And so how are we making sure that we have a very easy to follow process? I'm a big believer that we can write lots of standards, but if you don't give people a tool to be able to use that actually then walks them through the standard, then you're not likely to be very successful. So we really kind of embedded that into just the daily way of working, dashboarding of all of the readiness, so that we can really see how we're doing, where we can improve, where our risks are, and what we can do to mitigate. Then we've done a bunch of piloting. So a couple of things that we've piloted is we're actually starting to look at some of the 3D laser scanning. So kind of started a very, very small pilot in our Geismar facility, so that we can, like you said, start small, right, and learn from it. You know, I think Walter, my boss, who's sitting over there, was talking about use cases, and you know, I think we try to boil the ocean oftentimes, right? So if we can just think about a really small piece, grab that and do it well, and learn from it, right? Our senior vice president of operations engineering, he likes to say, do, learn, do, right? And so let's just do, and then learn, and then do it again. And the other one that we piloted at Nova, and I have some really good, and so does Walter actually, some really good experience with this prior to coming to Nova, is around putting RFID tracking on workers so we can understand where they are they in productive zones? How can we understand the barriers that they're facing in terms of being more productive, whether that's multiple trips to the tool crib, going to the laydown yard to get parts, around permitting, that sort of thing. And then in terms of some of the things that we're kind of currently looking at, it's you know, how do you actually equip the workers in the field with the information they need to do the work and progress the schedule? So you know, looking at actual in-field updates to the schedule so that in real time our schedulers can understand where we're at, what we can do to accelerate the critical path, how we can redeploy resources based on that real-time update as well. Instead of just doing it once, often turnarounds do it once every 24 hours. We like to do it once a shift, but now it's minute by minute.
Yeah, for sure. And I think touched on a lot of key topics there, and certainly in a lot of ways that at Nova you've digitized that turnaround process. But I want to take it back just a few steps and come over to Nicholas. Obviously, you guys with the reality imaging and the 3D planning, that really pays a lot of impact at the start of the process. So yeah, tell us about how that's working and where the tool's really seeing the most use.
So we really start in the pre-design analysis stage, and this is where the scanning data takes all its sense. Like a lot of work is being done in brownfield environments where documentation is not up to date. And over the last few years, 3D scanning has become an obvious value-added ways to gather brownfield environment information. What we started doing was really to just enable quick and fast way to do an analysis of, could I bring this equipment and how do I plan ahead my design before I hit it down to the design engineering phase. And that led us to gather really valuable side documentation that we now want to extend into new use cases, such as better planning of the turnaround. One element that makes us quite useful is that we put reality forward, and the reality of the site connects everyone together. And the fact that we can kind of gamify the experience to consume this data means that the operator, the subcontractors, the planners, they all have their common vision of what needs to be accomplished. And cloud and game engines and this ability to be real time means that we can really deliver data both from remote and on-site for people to gather and collaborate better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in terms of, it's been something that's been echoed across the session so far, but you can't really mention digitalization without the data aspect and having the data and being able to interpret the data and utilize it effectively to really, as you mentioned, make the process more efficient, identify those areas that you can have the most impact. So in terms of the reality imaging aspect, you mentioned the efficiency process. How has that really transformed the efficiency of a turnaround project?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges sometimes is that we know how to do work. We have a hard time communicating and collaborating together. And that's true across all industries, but even more so in such large deployment of that happens in oil and gas. So if we're able to clearly identify where the work has to be done and we deliver the data on that equipment, and we are able to all see in real time what's happening on site. We're able to plan ahead and make better decisions if we can to make sure that we meet the targets. So reality models are just a better way to take the silos and really connect everyone with the data in a much more convenient way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's so key is sort of breaking down those silos and beginning to break down those silos and use that data as a foundation to be able to have that collaboration across the business units. So actually, keen to hear your thoughts and your expertise in Dorama to sort of digitize the turnaround process and what that looks like for you.
I think it brings the cost, waste reduction, business viability, the product viability available, and it gives a more confidence to our stakeholders and our downstream customers also. We share this, and top of that, today you see the world is struggling, some of the old asset insurance. A lot of failures happens, then it's a millions of dollars goes on the insurance claim due to the unplanned or unexpected shutdowns and breakdowns and the catastrophic effect of that. Having this system, our insurance partners, they get a more and more strong confidence that this industry is even the old matured, but they are maturing in way of from old legacy system of manual monitoring to the digitalization. It brings a whole win-win situation.
Yeah, definitely. And you've touched on pretty much all of the benefits that I had listed in the run-up. So, obviously, as you mentioned, improved efficiency, cost effectiveness, enhanced safety and risk management, increased collaboration and communication. Touched on all of those points. Yeah. And while the benefits are fantastic of digitalization, I think it is equally important to touch on some of the challenges that we faced. So we'd be keen to hear around the panel what sort of challenges you faced when you've been implementing digital solutions or digital aspects within your individual organizations.
Do you want me to?
Well, we'll go over to the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, our biggest one was our contracting. So just with our software vendors, it's really hard to get a contract in place with anyone within Chevron. It takes a lot, and there's a cybersecurity question there. And that was a big part of it, right? The intellectual property protection and cybersecurity. The partners that the software companies that we bring in have to meet very stringent requirements with intellectual property and cybersecurity. So it's not that they don't, but we have the process of us vetting them it can be kind of painful. I kind of want to go back and touch on some of the turnaround benefits. One of the things that I think for the turnarounds, I was just out at the Richmond refinery, like I said, I was talking to our turnaround manager. It's all about time and money. Time is money, right? And one of the big things one of the big drivers for him to digitize was to get the right information to the right people at the right time. We've all heard that. But was to reduce rework, to plan better. And rework is something that you don't necessarily capture it as a line item cost, but everybody knows that it's there, right? We made a mistake in the planning, we didn't get our materials in the right place at the right time, and it caused schedule delays. And a turnaround or a shutdown, the schedule delays are where the real money is, right? That's where the real value is, because we measure downtime by the minute, right? Because every time that we're down, we're not producing, we're not making money. So for me, digitization and the turnaround process comes down to that. Can we make better decisions? Can we make better plans? Can we reduce our schedule times and our effective downtimes?
And that ties in with what we spoke about, Dave, in the run-up to this event, is the digital event readiness aspect that you mentioned at the top of the call, at the top of the panel, sorry. Digital event readiness. Tell us a little bit about that and a little bit more detail around sort of what that process looked like, some of the challenges that you overcame in that hurdle.
So it's actually not even that complicated. It's really taking your turnaround process and actually simplifying it into almost like a step-by-step instruction guide of what to do, along with clear due dates and accountability. And then putting that onto a dashboard and building workflow into the system, right? So, you essentially, it's really almost taking the approach that we have for execution of turnarounds to planning, right? So you've got logic built in there, you've got sequencing, right? You've got resource requirements all set out. And so I don't think, that we have necessarily done a great job of that in the past, of making sure that we really are being, kind of putting a resource-loaded schedule into our planning, right? And so it's helped us make sure that we don't get behind, that we don't run late on milestones. But certainly there's still those challenges and those risks out there, right? You mentioned earlier, you were asking earlier about the challenges and what's some of the biggest barriers, and some of that is just around holding to those milestones, and so this at least gives the visibility to it that didn't exist before. But the other big part is just the change, right? I'm sure that everybody here sees it. There is a huge resistance to change, and especially when it's taking something that used to be a very manual process and now putting, digitalizing it, right? And now, you mentioned earlier there, Jake, about the data and being able to kind of key us in on the right decisions. So along with all of this digitalization comes a huge amount of data. And so that's a big part of it, right? Is how do you actually streamline that data so that you're actually only looking at those few critical things that you can actually action and do something about? Because big data is not a lot of help if you don't actually do anything different. One of the earlier sessions was really talking about that, right? Around how important it is to take this into action. And if it's not taking it into action, honestly, we just would start having.
Yeah, for sure, and that obviously plays into some of the things you were touching on with looking forward, looking at some of the projects you've got in the pipeline, but haven't necessarily done yet. So looking at that, updating schedules in real time, using that data as sort of the feedback loop into the turnaround control room, and being able to use that to sort of know the status of the job, redeploy resources flexibly, and really be at the right place at the right time. In terms of Prevu, Nicholas, I want to come back to you. Obviously, you brought Jacob alongside you. I know that there's a really great case study behind that, so I want to let you have the opportunity to talk a little bit through that and how you've been working with Chevron with the digital payment.
You want me to go first? Yeah, so again, I'm in capital projects, and I'm in very early phase capital project support. So we have what we call a design engineering or design execution team, and in our business it would be called pre-FEED work, right? Front-end engineering and design. We've started using scans as kind of the foundation for doing some of this work. We're doing a lot of brownfield expansions. We don't do a lot of greenfield work anymore. So we take drone scans or ground scans, sometimes we have ground penetrating radar scans, and we try to merge them into a visualization platform that's democratized, and that's really where we like to use Prevu3D, but they've got some differentiating technology. I won't go into the details of that, that's really beneficial to us, but one of the things it allows us to do is to take the reality capture and then merge it with 3D objects that were created like in Aviva Z3D or in SmartPlant 3D. And this allows our early planning and development teams to come in and do scenario planning on layouts of equipment very, very quickly. My CAD designer was actually, he tells a story that he was with the engineering and the design team, and they were arguing about where the equipment was going to go, and they're visualizing it, real time across the world. Actually, there were several teams looking at it simultaneously, and while they were arguing about it, he just produced a whole new layout and published it in 30 minutes while they were talking about it. Right, so the ability for us to again go back and compress these design schedules is something that used to take our designer a week to do if he had to produce a whole new layout and publish it, and I can do it in a matter of minutes, if not hours. So that's really important for us, right? And that's part of digitalization, and that's getting it out. And what we're doing is that's for my design team. But like I said, I was out at Richmond, and my turnaround manager said, "Man, we have practical applications for this. I wanted to go do it." There's a question on here about the millimeter, 7mm scan versus 5 to 7, which is what we're using. It depends. For us, we just need to get within a few inches to see how our equipment's going to be laid out and the footprint that we have available on the brownfield, right? I don't need millimeter tolerances. But if you're trying to do tie-ins and you're trying to put flanges together, you need millimeter tolerances. So it kind of a use case basis. So for us, we're using a mobile scanner, a rapid mobile scanner. I won't say the name if you want to know, let me come talk to me afterwards, but it does exactly what we need. We don't need those tolerances this phase of the project, start doing steel fabricating spools and that sort of thing later on, and have higher tolerances. The holy grail would be for us to go do the rapid scans in this early phases, and then the places that we go and add new equipment, rescan it where we need the detail, and then stitch them together. So I'm hoping that Nick's gonna help us get to that point at some place, so I don't have to rescan the entire facility. I can just take out the bit that I want, the millimeter tolerances, and then plug it back into my overall platform. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, sure. I think in the panel prep call for this panel, I'm going to steal your phrase, but you said your scan is your Christmas tree, and the additional tools are the ornaments that you hang off the back of that.
That's right.
And that, I think, sums it up really nicely in terms of how that scan can be used. So Nicholas, to hand over to you, I know that with the 3D scanning, you're really looking at different ways that you can use that 3D scanning data. What are some of the use cases that the 3D scanning data can be really honed in on?
So 3D scanning is getting faster, cheaper, better quality. And I think when you mentioned like low quality scans, for most you would be amazed to see what low quality is today. The beauty of that is that once you take that data and you convert it in a format where everybody can consume it, we're again literally making video games out of real life, then the opportunity to improve processes is incredible. And it can address remote visit on sites, health and safety analysis, pre-design engineering, but also attaching data to models. So the biggest opportunity that I see today is that the entire industry is looking for ways to build digital twins. I guess it went from this buzzword to an actual real path forward for most of the major players that we get to work with. And they found ways to gather all their data. Now they need to find a way to make it deliverable for consumptions. And it turns out that gamifying the experience really makes it easy for people. So from our journey to have the pre-design engineering phase, I think the opportunity today for people is to now use this reality model to start to attach all the legacy data on top of it and start to make this data accessible based on who's asking, right? So if I'm an operator, what do I need to know? What if I'm in maintenance? And this is really, to me, the less information, the more value we deliver to the right people. So health and safety procedure, if you go to site, what are the risks? Tag in, tag out. What is my PNID link to this asset if I decide to close it down? Making the data accessible from your pocket when you're in front of it, you can access it. I think this is really the holy grail to be able to minimize it on site, but when you're on site also contribute to the knowledge base of the company. Like, hey, this is leaking. Oh, what is leaking? You don't have to run back to the office. You should be able to say this is leaking. Or I'm missing material here. I don't have the right part number. Could I filter through my SAP database to gather if I have the spare parts and get it shipped? Like, we have to empower more and more people through a very simple tool. It should be so easy to use that they don't have to learn to do it. I think a big part of the issue with legacy and why people don't want to change their practices is that it works so hard to master the way they work, they just won't even consider changing. Because yes, you can do a lot without digital tools. But I think everything that we've built to this point, like in 2023, we can build extremely complex stuff. But there's still ways to do better. And it really comes about giving access to data and simplifying the way we work.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the biggest sort of draws of digitalization aspects, both benefit but also quite a well-known sort of counter-argument is the level of friction. It's in place to remove friction, but sometimes because of that change management aspect, there is a lot of friction associated with it. So I think, like you mentioned, gamifying that and being able to use that as an opportunity to overcome and show how simple it can be is really important for that process.
There's so much knowledge leaving the industry today that's being replaced by a new generation that has a totally different point of view in terms of what tools they want to work with. So if we can leverage those kind of tools just to gather as much knowledge before it's lost, so the new generation come in and can actually benefit from it for years to come. Well, we say stuff break down. Most of the oil and gas and energy assets are big dates, right? So there's a lot of knowledge associated with them, and we're still gonna have to run with them for generations in front of us. So we need to find a way to connect the two generations together, and it has to be simple for both the existing experts and the upcoming experts.
Yeah, finding that way to bridge that gap is going to be the $1 million question, I think. But
Yeah.
I do want to come on to the audience questions. I can see there've been a few rolling in. I know, Jacob, you've already touched on some of the millimeter ones at the top there, but I'll take the second one. With digitalization of turnaround processes, is there opportunities to allow scope freezes to be more flexible and with last minute changes? So, Dave, I suppose most best place there to run through that one.
I'll admit I saw this question and immediately my brain went to a resounding no. There's a double-edged sword here, right? We have milestones in our turnaround preparation and planning process for a reason. And I think there's sometimes a lack of understanding as to why we have those requirements so early. People don't understand that as you change your scope last minute, you might change your isolation plan, you might change systemization, change the way that the schedule is actually put together, the sequencing, like it has huge implications. And so that's my resounding no. On the other hand, there are sometimes, particularly when things break, right? And we have to take that added work late in the game. These digital tools definitely enable us to be more successful at having successful, safe, efficient, productive execution of that work, right? So like I said, it's a double-edged sword, right? Yes, the digital tools help us, but they shouldn't be our scapegoat to allow us to not follow the process.
Yeah, sure. I think that's summed up really nicely. In terms of what we've got on the screen at the moment, is maturity in turnarounds a good gauge to the level of digital implementation? There's 3 questions in one there, but yeah, Suresh, do you want to have a go at that one? Is maturity in turnarounds a good gauge to the level of digital implementation?
Yeah, this is a good question. So, is maturity in turnarounds a good gauge to the level of digital implementation? And it is what happens if turnaround digital gets implemented too soon. So this gives very well, as you mentioned, on various benefits. It helps to visualize what are the pros and cons and what need to be done, especially if one more question was there, post-COVID and pre-COVID. So during COVID time, many of the industries do not compromise on the safety and done the turnaround, and something would have been missed, which is not too unsafe. But having digitalized, these all get documented and properly recorded. And like we talked, 3D scanning and then bringing all the sensitive data and inbuilt. And then this gets more in a well-executed plan that people can do, check on that. Otherwise, in the paper, it may miss out. So having that kind of level of watch of digital implementation, this makes well laid out the turnaround, which is one of the opportunity 3 years or 5 years, depends on the industry to industry, so varying from 3 to 5 or 6 years. And that is the opportunity, taking that lot of debottlenecking opportunity where and where. If they have this digital, they know that these are all the pain points which need to be addressed. So this is gauging is very important where digital gives. And then after the post turnaround or post debottlenecking turnaround, they know that where was the past trend having the digital. Otherwise, they have to go manually see that may be missed out, and they can say that these are all the punch points were there. This is addressed. This is the learning for future. And if it is a large group, this learning passes on to the other unit without waiting for the new discovery again, reinventing that one. So this is the benefit of digital. And I say that it is a strong digital, has to be every part of whether it is a medium scale or large scale. This makes a lot of safety, reliability, and the cost efficiencies and future improvements sustainable way.
Perfect. So we've got just 1 minute left. Closing comments. We'll do a quick line along the line. Jacob, I'll start with you. If there's,
I'm going to answer one of those questions because it was
Yeah.
about the adoption curve and how do you do that. At the end of the day, it's about building a product that is useful to people and easy for them to use, right? And I use the analogy back in the day, we used paper maps. And you can still use a paper map and you can say, how am I going to get from here to Dallas, right? But now we have the new technology that's very easy to use. You put it in your car, you say, I want to go to Dallas, but you have all this other benefit that comes along with it, right? You know where the gas stations are, where the road closures are, where the speed traps are, I think, but those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it comes down to usability of the tools. It has to be better, and it has to help. You always answer the question for the end user, what's in it for me? And if the tools are better, faster, and easier to use, and they help them make better decisions, they will adopt them on their own.
perfect. Nicholas, closing comments from yourself around digitizing the turnaround process. Any nuggets of information you want to leave the audience with?
I think there's no way we're going to change the way that things are done. We just want to improve them. So you will never just drop what you're doing and jump on a new tool overnight. But once you give it a try, and you start to see value, and this is why we've seen adoption at first that was just a pilot project that grows into master service agreement with large customers. I think you have to take the leap to try it out. Give it to your operations and give it to your engineers. They are the one that should be taking the decision. And people have such high expectation in terms of usability of tools. But once you go digital, like if you were to take away cell phones from people, they had to drive back to the office to check their emails, I'm not sure they would be so happy about it. So we don't have to be scared. We have to give it a shot at a smaller scale as you were describing. And then you will see what the possible impact would have on the larger organization.
Perfect. Yeah, conscious of the slight minute that we've run over there. So, Jacob, David, Suresh, Nicholas, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, share your expertise today. As I'm sure that you guys will all be aware, if you do want to grab any of these folks and have a further conversation with them, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to talk about this. Prevu3D, Nicholas, you guys are at booth 327. If anyone wants to come down to the exhibition hall and talk about Prevu3D and any of the things that we spoke about today, please feel free to reach out to Nicholas. But until then, I would like everyone to give him a big hand. Thank you so much for your time.